Morning, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about home pages. I've started sharing my screen already, so hopefully everyone can see that. So we're going to talk about all the basics around managing home pages and what you can do with them. I thought it'd be useful just to start with to pop up this slide from the last session that we did on content types with a summary around sort of what home pages are. So home pages are effectively our sort of widget-based pages that give you a lot of control over the content layout. And also using widgets, you can source information from other systems. There are widgets out of the box that do various different things in terms of presenting information from within Jadu as well. So the benefits of it, they give you a sort of fully configurable page structure. There's a standard set of out-the-box widgets that everyone gets. And alongside that, we've got a catalog of widgets that are available. So normally during implementation, you'll be given, depending on the level of implementation you have, a certain number of catalog widgets that you can have included. And the catalog widgets are also available to purchase as well to add additional functionality to home pages. If you have internal developers, you can create your own custom widgets as well. So development's entirely possible. And we do have a developer training that will run through that with people. Alternatively, obviously, we have professional services if you want us to develop a custom widget for something specific for you. As I said, widgets can integrate with third-party systems, so you can pull in information from other sources and present it within the context of your website. And they also have the ability, a bit like document pages in the content management system, for using sort of reusable page supplements. So where you want to present information like contact details and things like that, you can literally just create a reusable supplement and present that everywhere. Home pages is a sort of essentially a drag and drop user interface. You can save any sort of widget layout as a reusable template that you can use again and again. They tend to be mainly used for building what we call category landing pages and the main site site homepage. But you can also use them for creating what we call independent home pages, which may be pages where maybe you just want to present the content in a slightly different way to the sort of standard options around document pages and things like that. Just to show you some sort of really basic examples of home pages. Home pages, I have to say, the one thing that are very dependent on your design in terms of what you do with them. It's one of the reasons we normally, when we're doing an implementation, have a session with you on home pages following the deployment of your templates, because until the templates are there, they're quite difficult to put together because they are so design dependent. It's one of the probably the only content type where that comes into effect. But here, for example, we've got a local authority homepage for a council website with a number of sort of widgets for things like top tasks, adverts promoting content, news and events. Sort of another kind of government landing page, more for sort of a particular category of information. So this is one of our Australian customers. So this is a landing page for all of their information around managing an event and holding an event in the area. Through to more kind of almost like sort of magazine promotional type landing pages like this one for Wayne State College in Nebraska, which, they've got a whole sort of landing page focused on sort of college admissions with a number of different widgets on there, but obviously with a very sort of different look and feel to a sort of council landing page. So you can see, really just by those three examples, how effectively a lot of them are probably using the same or similar widgets, but they're all presented in a very different way depending on the site design. So to jump into home pages, let me just get logged in. You find home pages under the publishing menu within the system. So I can go to publishing and then home pages. As with most sort of content types across the system, it automatically defaults to show you content that you personally have created. And depending on your privileges, you might have additional access to other pages that other people have created. We also have a couple of tabs here for activating what we call category homepages, which we'll talk about later, and for directly accessing independent homepages. But if I go into a homepage to create one, the first thing it's going to do is ask me to assign some properties to my homepage. So let me just call this one Masterclass. I can put a description in. This isn't really used anywhere directly in the system apart from if you go in and view the properties. But it's sometimes useful if it's not obvious from the title of your homepage. It's a bit of a description in there that explains what that homepage is being used for. Obviously, in terms of content, we'd always recommend that your title makes it really obvious. But sometimes that's not the case. So you can add a description in there so that if someone's editing that homepage, they're not quite sure exactly what its purpose is, they can go in and check that. You can choose from what we call whether it's going to be a category landing page or a standalone landing page. Category landing pages are pages that will appear instead of the sort of dynamically generated navigation on a category page within the platform. So the homepage gives you the ability to get rid of that sort of generic alphabetic list of links and present a much more user-focused experience. It defaults to category landing pages because they're most often used, but you do have the option for what we call a standalone landing page, which rather than being a piece of content that appears directly at a category level, would be potentially a piece of content within a category. And you're using home pages as a way of creating an alternative layout for that information. So it might be a marketing promotion or just a content page that you want to use widgets with to create a more focused effect. So I'm going to leave this one as a category landing page. You have a choice about page structure. So this gives you the option of 2-column or 1-column. So 2-column effectively, depending on your site design and where your navigation column sits, whether it's the left or the right-hand side, will give you the ability to have your homepage content and then that navigation column as well. And you could use the navigation column for adding things like page supplements. If you want to use the full width of the page for your homepage content, then you can change it to a 1-column design. And then literally you've just got one content column on the page that will just show the information that you've added to your homepage. As with all other content in the system, you have to assign a category to it. Particularly important if it's a category landing page, because you want to assign the category that you want that content to appear as the landing page for. I'll choose random. Let's choose business for the example. And then you've got the metadata option, same as you have for other content types. So you can put in comma-separated keywords. You can put in a description. Valid to and from dates. There's no content scheduling with home pages. These are really just used for metadata. And then you have the usual additional sort of advanced options for determining, instructions for robots that are crawling sites. And also the advanced metadata if you want to add any more sort of additional detail in or edit any of the default content in the advanced metadata. The other thing with home pages is it gives you the option to assign a style sheet. So I only have one style sheet in this system, but there is functionality within the platform that allows you to effectively have multiple style sheets. So if, for example, you wanted your sort of main sections across your site to be color coded, you might have a number of style sheets that you could pick and choose from at this point to select the appropriate style sheet and color scheme for that page. And then once I've set the initial settings up, then we're into the sort of standard drag and drop interface. So home pages are constructed with rows, and into those rows you can drag and drop widgets to add your content. So rows, you can add multiple rows to a home page, and you can literally drag and drop widgets into a row. Some of them will default to different widths. If you need to change the width on a widget, you can click the sort of arrows and either type in a percentage or use the slider to adjust the width and then click done. So let's make that 100%. Widgets have sort of two basic kinds of default behavior. They're either widgets that you have to click the little pencil icon and go in and configure in some way, or they may be widgets like, for example, the latest news widget that we have, where they literally just pick up content from somewhere else within the platform or from a third-party platform and present that information. So there's very little configuration needed. It's sort of there automatically. As I said, there are a number of standard widgets that come out of the box, and there are also the catalog widgets that we have available. This system has sort of, I think, virtually every widget we have installed on it. So you can see the various widgets associated with our My Account sort of Jadu Connect platform. There are also sort of standard widgets for things like opinion polls. What's new on site, that's another standard widget. But then more sort of catalog widgets would be things like the advanced latest news widget or the featured content widget. So in your area map and search results, all those are sort of like catalog widgets as well. So if I want to add some content to a widget or configure a widget, once I've dragged my widget into the row that I want to add it to, I'd click the pencil icon. And this is obviously a basic content widget. So I could literally add a header or put some content in there, just grab some text. So for this one, I've got the full rich text editor. I can go in and start sort of putting content into that widget. And in fact, let's add a little sort of subheading as well. So when I click continue, then that obviously take up the full width of the page. If I dragged another widget into that row, it will automatically adjust the widths. So if I grab something like a navigation widget, let's say, I can drag and drop. The other thing I can do is I can select the widget and then select which row I want to add it to and do it that way. So if I click add and go back up, you'll see it's now drops that navigation widget into there. That's often a useful way to add a widget to a row if you have a number of rows and your home page is quite long. But you can see it's automatically adjusted the widgets to both be 50% width. If I wanted to, I could go in and change the balance. So I can make that one 25%, and then my content widget, I could go in and make it 75%. You'll notice it won't let me drag it any bigger than 75%. It automatically enforces the sort of 100% rule for the width. And then with my navigation widget, I can go in and start adding links to that. The other thing you can do with widgets, as well as adding widgets to rows, you can stack widgets one on top of the other. So this is often useful if you want to create almost like a column within a row. So you may, for example, this content widget might contain quite a lot of information, and I don't want to end up with a lot of white space in the row on the right-hand side. So I could go in and I could select my pencil icon. I could go to the settings tab and I could then select a widget to combine with my navigation widget. So I might select something like, I don't know, let's have the gallery widget there. Let's try that again. try a different widget. Let's pick news. There you go. So you can see it's now put a wrapper around those two widgets and put them in a column. But the basic mechanics of building your homepage is, dragging your widgets into your rows and organizing them in the way that you want them to be organized. So these are much more sort of crafted pages than a lot of the other content types within Jadu. If I save that, I can go in and preview it. If I'm not happy with it, I can go back and make some changes. But if I was happy with the homepage, then I can submit it for approval. Now, the approval process works in the same way as it does for all other content types within the system, where you've got content approval. So you can approve and publish content or reject content. You may not have rights to do that. You might have to send your content to someone else to check it. But there's one slight difference with homepages that really comes into play when we're talking about category homepages. So with category homepages, once you've made that homepage live, there are a couple of steps that you need to take to fully activate the homepage to appear at category level. So if, for example, at the moment, I went in and straight to view live because I've now approved that homepage, you'll see that this is showing as a piece of content that sits within business. So actually, if this was, let me go in and change something here. If this was actually going to be our business homepage, I'd probably have called it business at that point. And then you'll see something odd happen when I go to preview it again now or view it live. So you'll see I've got what looks like duplicated breadcrumb. So this is because at the moment, because we've categorized the page as business, it's treating it as a piece of content that sits within the business category. And if you look at the URL, you'll see that after the domain, it's got /homepage. Whereas if I go to my category, if I go a step up and go to the business category, it's just /business. So what I really want is to replace this sort of dynamic navigation that's being created with my homepage content. And I want to get rid of that duplicated sort of breadcrumb that we see here. So there are two steps to this. So when launching a category landing page, once you've approved it, you can go back to the main homepages menu and select Activate Category Homepages. This will show you a list of categories that you can drill down through to find the category that you want to assign the homepage to. So if I select business, I can see that there's just one homepage associated with that category. But if there are multiple homepages, they'd all be listed here on the right-hand side. And then what I need to do is select yes to indicate that I want this to be the homepage that appears as my category for business. So now I've done that. If I go back to here, if I go to the business category, you'll see that I've now got my homepage content sitting under business. You can see the URL /business. But there's still an issue in that actually there's still this duplicated breadcrumb with that homepage sitting as an independent piece of content underneath business. So to get rid of this, there's another step that I need to take. So if I come back to here, go to my list of homepages and select business. Once I'm looking at my homepage in the designer, if I go to actions, there's an option for what we call the default URL. If I select that, you can see that at the moment, the default URL is the independent version of this homepage, which we don't want because we want this to be the category landing page. So all we need to do is switch from /homepage/54business to /business. and click update. If I now go to view live, you'll see it takes me straight to the business landing page, and there's no breadcrumb duplication. And this is the URL that I would always want to link to signpost someone to that page. So obviously category landing pages would tend to be very sort of task driven normally, sort of with key call outs to top tasks within that category and key important information. Potentially not a lot of content on the page, more sort of a signposting page. So can you make a homepage not live after making it live the way you can with document pages? That's not something you can do at the moment. So with home pages, to remove them completely, you would normally have to delete them. I've got a weird feeling it's one of the feature suggestions, so we can check that for you as well, Nick. Okay. So for an independent homepage, if I go back to my page, let's pretend that I want this to be more of a campaign page. Let me kind of make some changes to it. Pop a few things in. Let's have the latest news. And then let's add what's on maybe as well. Let's leave it at that. So let's say this is more of a kind of landing page for a campaign that's running. So we want more of a content focused page. Let me change the title again and some of the settings. So if I go into my properties, if I was setting up a independent homepage, I'd need to make sure that the title reflects what the content is about. Let's call this my new campaign. So that would be anything you want that reflects the content of the page. I would change independent homepage to standalone homepage. And then I've got a couple of options here that appear if it's an independent homepage. So as a standalone landing page, I can decide whether I want it to be visible. If I select yes, that would make it visible as part of the dynamically generated navigation at category level. Or if I just wanted to link to it from somewhere specific, I could leave that set to no and then link from a widget or from another piece of content or wherever I might need to go from. The other thing it does is it asks if you want to assign a friendly URL to it. So let's call it my campaign. So for marketing, you might have a friendly URL that you've assigned to your independent homepage. And apart from that, this level, all those settings are the same. So let me save that. So I'll submit that and approve it. And then I'm just going to switch off the category activation on it because it's no longer a category page. Let me go back into it. So for an independent landing page, my default URL should always be set to the /homepage1. Let's just approve that again. And if I view that live, you'll see I've got sort of some breadcrumb that actually makes sense in terms of that being a piece of content sitting within the business section as a campaign of some kind, or even just a content page where you want to use a slightly different layout. Let's just see if we've got any other questions. So that's sort of, I guess, the real basics of managing home pages. Additional things to keep in mind, as I mentioned, you can save a layout as a reusable set of widgets. So if I go to Actions, I've got Save as Template as an option. If you've added content to the widgets, it's going to save all that content as well in the template. So it might be that if you're creating a home page that you're going to use as a standard layout for your landing pages, you might want to just add all the widgets first without configuring them and then save that as a template. When you save it as a template, you can give your template a title. Let's call it standard landing page. You could put a description in. You could also take a screenshot of an existing landing page that uses that layout and upload it as a thumbnail image when someone goes in and takes a look at the templates if they're looking at applying one. So if I save that as a template, if I went in and created a new home page, just do this quickly. If I want to then use one of my templates, I can go to Actions and Apply Template. I could select my standard landing page template that I've just created and assign it, and it will then drop all of those widgets in. As I said, normally you'd want to save it without the widgets being configured, just with the standard sort of containers set up. The other elements that you have with home pages, if I go back to the one I created previously, you do have the standard options for viewing the history of that page to see who's edited it, when it's been edited, when it was approved, all of those kinds of things. You also have track changes, which will show you different sort of layout versions as well. Different lists of what widgets we're in. So you can see in this version, I've got a navigation widget, latest news. In this one, I've got what's on. And you can roll back to previous versions if you need to. View links gives you the option to see if there are any links within the site that are pointing at that page as well. So currently I've not linked to it, so there's nothing to display. But if there is, if I'd gone in and created a link to it from another landing page or somewhere, then those links would show. It's useful often to check that for any type of content if you're thinking about deleting a page or taking a page offline, because you can at a glance see if you've linked to that page from anywhere else in the site. So you can then go in and update and manage your links as well. So at the moment, I've got my landing page with my sort of standard sort of widget styles on there. And one of the other things you can do with widgets is you can actually apply different styles to widgets. So let's say, for example, I wanted this widget to have a different color heading style. Because I've created one earlier, I can go into my widget configuration. I can go to settings, and I've got either red or teal as heading styles. So let's choose red. So if I apply that style to my widget and save that, if I preview that now, you can see that that heading is now red as opposed to the standard black. I might let me add another content widget somewhere. Let's add another row. You can drag your rows to reorganize them. Equally, you can drag widgets between rows as well. But let me add a content widget to my second row. Let's add a third one as well. I'll just pop some content in. And then save my homepage. Let's reapprove it. If I view that live now, obviously you'd never have two content widgets with exactly the same content in. But if I wanted to sort of clearly differentiate between my content widgets, I could use a homepage widget style to do that. So if I go into this one, in the settings, I'm going to choose a green style that was set up earlier, and I'm going to go into the second one in settings, and I'm going to choose a maroon style. And let's save that. So if I preview that now, you'll see that those widgets now have different colored backgrounds to differentiate them. So in theory, you could have any number of widgets of this being the same type of widget on a page, but you can style them all differently using widget styles. So to create widget styles, you do need knowledge of style sheets and CSS. I don't know much about style sheets and CSS, but if we go in here, if we go to settings, under settings, there's a thing called the widget manager. Now, this is where you can come to sort of manage any custom widgets or upload them. You can either upload them here or sort of more commonly, people will deploy them as part of a release. But if I go to styles, I can select a style sheet. If you've got multiple style sheets, you can assign different widget styles to different style sheets. So I'm going to just choose my standard CSS one. And you can see here, I've got my different widget styles. I go into this one. So this is my CSS for creating that sort of background. I'm just going to copy that. So I'm going to create a new widget style. So let's call this, I don't know, blue background. Just call it blue. I'm going to paste that in there. And then for this one, I just want to change the background color. So let me grab a code for my background color. So I'm just going to paste a sort of hex code for the color definition in there. And save that as a new widget style. So if I go back to my home page, let's kind of change one of these and change it to my new blue style. Fingers crossed it will work. There we go. So that's now got a blue background. So there's quite a lot you can do with widget styles in terms of changing design. So has anyone got any questions about anything that we've covered so far? Coming to Q&As. So Julie's asked, why do you have to assign a category to a standalone page? So standalone page is only standalone in that it isn't a page that appears at the category level. So it's still a piece of content within your website that needs to sit within a category for it to be able to be accessed. So like sort of news stories, document pages, you always have to assign a category to say this is where that piece of content lives within the website. Aisha's asking, are there any widget styles in the library that we can all access? I can check that for you. A lot of the time, the widget styles will be quite dependent on your template design. But things like these, I think, are fairly sort of basic ones, so I can check to see if we've got any of those available in the library. Okay. Any other questions about anything to do with home pages? So I think home pages is the feature that allows you to create sort of much more dynamic pages within the platform. And it's relatively easy to do. They can be particularly useful in terms of things like widget styles. If you're deploying Galaxy sites, maybe using some of the standard out-of-the-box templates, it gives you that option to go in and make changes to the way that the widgets are displayed or and the color schemes. But widget, as I say, home pages is that one part of the system that gives you a lot more flexibility over the content layout and how you use it. As always, we will make the video of the session available on YouTube at some point, so you can go and review it. There is a playlist on YouTube of all the previous masterclasses. If you go to jadu.net/masterclasses, that will take you straight there. Also, we'll be sending out a questionnaire if you want to suggest any topics that you might want to cover in future masterclasses. We've got a few planned that are coming up, so we're back on now after the summer break. So we'll shortly be letting you know what's going to be happening next month. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming along, and hopefully we'll see you all on the next masterclass.